So these are the mittens that I'm going to show you how to make. They're actually really beautiful. I love how they turned out. And then also, don't forget your matching hat to go with your set. Looks really beautiful. I love how these turned out. For this video tutorial, you're going to need your 6mm crochet hook along with a tapestry needle or darning needle and a pair of scissors. The yarn that I'm using is a big twist yarn, and this is a really pretty blue colored yarn. Now it's important to remember that if you change your crochet hook size or your yarn style, it's going to affect the size of your mittens. So I'm going to be showing you how to size your mittens. So the first starting chain is just going to be the width of your ribbed portion for the mittens. So the width of it. So to make the starting chain, you're just going to take your yarn, fold it over on itself to form a loop, take your crochet hook, go right through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and your thumb. Go ahead and yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for your slip knot. Go ahead and cinch that knot down and cinch the loop around your crochet hook. And then I'm just going to show you 4 chains on video tutorial, but you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for 1 chain, 2, 3, 4. So if you're making the same size width as mine, I'm making a chain of 10. So I made a chain of 10, which is about 3 inches. And this again is the same width that I used for the brim of my hat. So I'm using the same width for the mittens as well. So I started with a chain of 10. And you make this the same way that you would for the hat. So we have the width would be this chain 10. The amount of rows would be the length to get the circumference. So the circumference would be the opening for your mitten. Same thing as for the hat, except the hat, of course, has a larger circumference or opening. So now you have your chain of 10, and you're going to go into the second chain from the hook. So you count back from the hook, 1, 2, and you're going to go into that second chain from the hook. You're going to yarn over and turn the hook upside down and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch. And you're going to make 1 slip stitch in every stitch back across. And then when you finish making 1 slip stitch in every stitch back across, you should have a total of 9 stitches. Because we made a slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, that will give you a stitch count of 9. Even though you started with a starting chain of 10. And for beginners, it's very important that you count your stitches to make sure that you are maintaining your stitch count for each row that you complete. So this is my first row of slip stitches, and you should have 9 stitches. So I'm going to count them with you. So now, here is your first stitch, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. So we have 9 stitches. Now you're just going to turn your work. And then this first stitch is the difficult stitch because it's right behind your yarn here. But you're going to go to the left of the yarn and grab that top stitch. So just grab the top stitch right on top, yarn over, and then bring the yarn through both loops for a slip stitch. And then you're just going to grab the top stitch of each stitch back across. That's that back loop. So here is the back loop. Here is the center of the loop of this next stitch, and here is the front loop right here. So you're going into the back stitch only, so the stitch right on top makes it easy. And you just make a slip stitch in each of those top loops, so just one, go right down the center, grab that back loop, just the one loop, and make a slip stitch in every stitch back across. And when you finish this second row, you should still have a stitch count of 9. So this is how your work should look after finishing that second row. And you have 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then you just turn your work. And again, that first stitch is tricky, but you want to go to the left of the yarn. You can see how I'm holding the yarn straight up and down. Go to the left of the stitch and grab that top loop only, the back loop only. So you can see how I'm holding my yarn and my work, and how I went to the left of the yarn into that first loop, the back loop only, and then you can see the stitches are on top. So here's the center of the stitch, and then you're going to go into the center of the stitch and grab that back loop or the top loop only. So here's the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth stitch. So you just make a slip stitch and try not to make your stitches too tight. So you can kind of lift up just a little so your loop is not tight on your crochet hook. And then you just go into every stitch grabbing the top stitch or the back loop only and making a slip stitch. There's my second. Third. Don't skip a stitch either. Sometimes it's easy to miss it. So there's the fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, and 9. And then you just keep repeating this, just turning your work, going behind or to the left of that first stitch, making sure you don't miss that first stitch behind your yarn. So there's the first slip stitch, grabbing the back loop only, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seven, 8, and 9. And then you just turn your work and repeat. So you just keep repeating this until you have the size that you want for the opening for your mittens. When you come back, I'll show you the length that mine is. So now you just make the length that you want for your circumference or opening of your mitten. So when you fold it in half, this would be the size of your opening for your mittens. So if you like the size that I made, and again, you have to remember that if you use a different size hook or a different style of yarn, it will affect the size of your mittens. So if you like the size of mine is about, this one is about 7.5 inches. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, about 7. Actually, it's closer to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's actually 8 inches in length. Then you decide which side you want for the opening, or the side that you want as your right side or the side that's showing. Both sides look good, but you pick a side. So I'm going to make this my right side. So you're going to take and fold it so that the right sides are together. Then you're going to take and make a slip stitch into the top stitch on the opposite side. So just go right into that top stitch, yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook. Then go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and make sure you bring enough yarn through to sew the edges together. Then you get your tapestry needle. Put it onto the long end that you left for sewing. And then, again, I have the wrong side facing me, and I'm just going to take and sew the two edges together. And this creates a little bit of a ridge, so that's why you want it on the wrong side. And then you just sew it all the way across. Then you can take and tie a knot with the loose yarn end. And then you just bury your loose yarn ends. So then you just take and weave the yarn through. I like to go a couple of different directions, and then just trim the loose yarn end. So go ahead and bury your loose yarn ends and then come back. Then you have the opening for your mittens. So you can see how you can alter the size to whatever size that you want. And this is the wrong side. You can see the sewing ridge, so go ahead and flip it so that the right side is showing. And then we're going to take and join our yarn right after the seam that we just made. So you take your crochet hook, go right into that stitch, and then you want to bring up a loop with your yarn. So this is very similar to the hat, the matching hat. Make sure you leave enough of a loose yarn end for burying into your work, and then tie a knot. And we're going to bury the loose yarn end as we crochet. Go ahead and chain 1. And then we're going to evenly space 1 single crochet in every stitch around. So just go right into the next stitch, go behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop, and then make a single crochet. So you're just going to evenly space 1 single crochet all the way around back to where you started. So you can use this seam that we created by sewing the two ends together, so you know when you get back to where you started. So go ahead, finish evenly spacing 1 single crochet in every stitch around for 1 round, and then come back. So for mine, I ended up with 23 stitches, and for this first round you may have a different stitch count than from me, and that's okay. For this next round, I'm going to show you how to increase your stitches to add stitches for your next round. So to complete this round, you're going to make a slip stitch into that first chain 1 that you made. So just go under both loops of the first chain 1 that you made, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook. And then now this is going to be an increase round. So go ahead and grab a yarn marker. And for this increase round, you just add however many stitches, evenly space them around, and I'll show you where the increase stitch would be. But you would add as many stitches as you need to get a stitch count of 26. So right now I have a stitch count of 23. So I want to add 3 more stitches. So you just add 3 more increased stitches around, evenly space it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So you're going to make a single crochet into the first stitch. And then you just make 1 single crochet in every stitch except for the increase stitch. So I'm going to make an increase stitch right here. To make an increase stitch, you're going to make 2 single crochet into the same stitch. So you go into the same stitch, make 2 single crochet into the same stitch. So I just increased by 1 stitch in that 1 stitch. So I need to do that 2 more times in the round. So I'm going to make 1 single crochet into every stitch until I'm ready for my next increase stitch. And it could be anywhere, I just evenly space it out. So I'm going to go ahead and make it right here. So I'm going to make 2 single crochet into the same stitch. And then I just need 1 more somewhere in the round. So I'm just make 1 single crochet in every stitch until I'm almost to my yarn marker. So I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. So I'm going to make 2 single crochet into the same stitch. So I just increased by 3 stitches in this round. So I'm just going to make 1 single crochet into each of the remaining stitches. And that means that I should have a stitch count of 26 now. So I'm going to double check, count my stitches. So if you added your increase stitches in the round, you should have a stitch count of 26 just like me. And I do have 26 stitches in the round. So now I'm going to remove my stitch yarn marker and make a slip stitch into the next stitch over. So just yarn over and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch. Then you're going to chain 2. 1, 2. And I like to put a stitch marker into that second chain. And the reason why I do that is because when you're working with half double crochets, sometimes it's hard to tell where it is that you need to slip stitch. So the stitch marker will show you where you need to slip stitch. And then in the stitch before my chain 2, I'm going to place a yarn marker so I'll know that that is my last stitch in the round. So now I'm going to make 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. So you yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 3 to complete a half double crochet. And you're going to make 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. And then that first chain 2 counts as your first stitch in the round. And when you get back to your yarn marker, you should have 26 half double crochet stitches in the round. So you yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, and then go yarn over and pull through all 3 for a half double crochet. And you just make 1 half double crochet in every stitch in the round. So now I reached the stitch with my yarn marker. I'm going to go ahead and remove it and make my last half double crochet in the round. And I would recommend double checking your stitches. You should have 26 half double crochet stitches in the round. So go ahead and count your stitches. And then you have your stitch marker in place, so you know you go right into that stitch to make your slip stitch. And then you finished that round. First round of half double crochets. Then you just chain 2 and then move your stitch marker up to the second chain to start your next round. So now I have my stitch marker in place where I know I need to make my slip stitch, and I have my yarn marker in place for the last stitch in the round. So now we pay attention to where the chain 2 lines up with the half double crochet post from the previous round. So you can see that it lines up with this half double crochet post from the previous round. So the next post would be right here. And this is the one that you're going to be making a front post half double crochet stitch around. So you're going to yarn over and you're going to go right into the stitch before the post from the previous round, go behind the post of that half double crochet stitch, and then you see that the post is in front of the crochet hook, and that's how it gets its name, front post half double crochet stitch. So then you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and then bring the yarn behind the post, and then bring up a loop, and you have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and go through all 3 to complete a front post half double crochet. Then you're going to make, and this is where it's a little bit tricky because it's hard to see the stitch for the half double crochet. So what I do is I look at the post. So here's the post. That means that this is the stitch. So you're going to make a half double crochet, yarn over, make a half double crochet into that stitch. And you can see how it lines up. So you actually skipped the stitch of the post that you made a half double crochet, a front post half double crochet around, and then made a half double crochet into the next stitch. And now we're going to make a front post half double crochet stitch around this post from the previous round. So you should always have a post free where you make your half double crochet and then your front post half double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over and go into the stitch space right in front of the post that I want to make my front post half double crochet stitch around. Then I just yarn over and then complete my half double crochet. So I just finished a front post half double crochet stitch. So you can see here's my first chain 2, here's my front post half double crochet stitch, half double crochet stitch, front post half double crochet stitch. Now I need a half double crochet stitch. And you just keep repeating this pattern all the way around until you get back to your last stitch before slip stitching to complete the round. So I'm just going to make a couple more with you. So I know that I didn't make a front post around this post, so I need to make it around this one. So yarn over, go in the space right before the post that I'm going to go behind. And even though you're going behind the post, it's called a front post half double crochet because the post is in front of the crochet hook. Then you yarn over, bring up a loop, and complete your half double crochet. So I finished a front post half double crochet stitch. Then you're going to make a half double crochet into the next stitch. And you just keep repeating that pattern all the way around. It creates a really nice, pretty stitch until you get back to where you started. So I'm just going to make one more set with you. So I know I didn't make a front post half double crochet stitch around that one, so I'm going to make one around this next one. And then I'm going to make a half double crochet into the next stitch. I'll make one more. And then you make a half double crochet into the next stitch. So go ahead, finish this round, and then come back. So now I just finished my half double crochet stitch right before my yarn marker. I'm going to be making a front post half double crochet stitch around that last post, and then I can slip stitch into the stitch marker. Stitch. And then I chain 2 to move up to the next round. And then to see if you made it correctly, you can see that I only have 1 stitch in between each of the front post half double crochet stitches all the way around, and it looks gorgeous. Now for the next round, you want to move your stitch marker and yarn marker in place so you can see that I have the chain 2 lines up with the space in between the front post half double crochets, and I put my yarn marker in place right before the chain 2 where I'm going to be making my slip stitch into that top stitch of the chain 2. I have my stitch marker marking it. If you don't use the stitch marker or this method, you'll see that it's kind of tricky finding where you need to slip stitch. If you want an even seam, I found that this method works amazingly well. So now for the next round, you're going to be making 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. So you just yarn over, and then you go into the first stitch, and then just make a half double crochet, and you're just going to make 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. So now I'm back to my yarn marker. I'm going to remove it, and this is my 26th half double crochet stitch. So I'm happy that the count is correct, and you can see that it's creating the beautiful pattern, the same pattern that I used for the hat. Then you're going to take and make a slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker. See if I can grab both loops. There we go. And that completes that round, and then you can chain 2, and you're going to start the next round. Just move your stitch markers up. So I have my stitch marker in place and my yarn marker in place, and now the hardest part is finished. Now it gets a lot easier, and the reason why I say that is because you have your front post half double crochet posts that you'll be working around, and so they're evenly spaced. So this first chain 2 counts as the first half double crochet for this round. So the next stitch will be a front post half double crochet stitch around 2 rounds down around the previous round's front post half double crochet stitch. So you just yarn over and you go around the previous round's front post half double crochet stitch, yarn over, bring up a loop, and then bring the yarn through all 3 loops to complete your front post half double crochet stitch. Then you know that you need a half double crochet in between your front post half double crochet stitches, so your half double crochet stitch will go into that stitch. And then the next stitch will be a front post half double crochet stitch around the previous round's front post half double crochet stitch. So this is a half double crochet round, so you're actually going down to the second round to find the front post half double crochet stitch. So just yarn over, go around that post, bring up a loop, and then complete your front post half double crochet stitch. And then you know that you need 1 half double crochet stitch, yarn over, go into that next stitch, make your half double crochet stitch, and then you make your front post half double crochet stitch. So it's that easy. And you're just going to keep repeating these rounds, a half double crochet round, and then a front post half double crochet and a half double crochet stitch round. And you just keep alternating those rounds until you have the length that you want for your mittens. So go ahead, finish this round, and then come back, and I'll work the next round with you. I'll work the next couple rounds with you. I'm just going to show you a little bit more of this round. So I'm making my front post half double crochet stitch, and you can see how the stitches should line up. All of the front post half double crochet stitches, all of the half double crochet stitches, all of the front post half double crochet stitches, and it's just creating a beautiful pattern. So go ahead, finish this round, and then come back. So now I've reached my yarn marker. I just finished a front post half double crochet. I'm going to remove that yarn marker, make a half double crochet into that stitch, and then finish my last front post half double crochet stitch around the previous rounds. Make sure I grab the whole post. Then I can make a slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker to complete the round. Then I chain 2 to move up to the next round. And you can see how with the method that I use, it lines up perfectly and you can't even see the seam that's there. The only seam that you see is this one where we joined it right here, and then the seam is lost in the design. So it looks really pretty. And this will be the front and this is the back. So now go ahead and move your stitch markers up. So now you don't want to forget that our last round was a half double crochet, front post half double crochet stitch round. So this round is just one half double crochet in every stitch around. So you just make one half double crochet in every stitch around. And you don't want to forget this round because it does make a difference with your pattern. So now I finished my last half double crochet stitch in the round. Now for this round you should have 26, but I ended up with 25 for this round, and it doesn't matter because for this round the stitch count doesn't really matter as long as you're just like one off, because you're following this pattern anyway where you do the front post half double crochet and one half double crochet in between. So you don't have to worry too much or redo this round if you're one off. So then you just make, after you finish your last half double crochet stitch, you just make a slip stitch into the stitch with your stitch marker to complete the round, and then you chain 2 to move up to the next round. Then you just move your stitch markers up, and then you're ready to start your next round. So now you know that this first chain 2 is the half double crochet that's between the 2 front post half double crochet stitches from 2 rounds down. So now your next stitch will be a front post half double crochet stitch from the previous round that had a front post half double crochet stitch. So you yarn over, go down to that post, and continue the front post half double crochet stitch. And then you know that the next stitch will be a half double crochet in between, and then a front post double crochet stitch around the previous rounds, 2 rounds down, the previous round's post half double crochet or front post half double crochet stitch. So that's why I said that it doesn't, the only thing that matters really is that you maintain this pattern until you get the length that you want for your mittens or where you want your thumb opening. So now we know we need a half double crochet stitch into the next stitch. then a front post half double crochet stitch around the previous round's front post. So that's why I told you that the stitch count for just the half double crochet round doesn't have to be perfect. It's mainly it just helps with the pattern, but the main pattern is with the front post half double crochet stitch and the half double crochet stitch in between. And it creates a gorgeous pattern. So now you know how to make this pattern. Go ahead and repeat this pattern until you have the length that you want. And when you come back, I'll show you where I start. I'll measure this for you so you see how long mine is, and then I'll show you how to make the thumb opening. So I just finished a front post half double crochet stitch, and then I have my yarn marker. I'm going to make a half double crochet into that stitch, and then finish my last front post half double crochet stitch. Then I can make a slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker to complete the round. Then I chain 2 and then move my stitch markers up. And you can see how the pattern is staying consistent all the way around. It looks gorgeous. So then you know that this round is going to be 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. So don't forget to alternate the 1 half double crochet in every stitch and then the round with the front post half double crochet stitch round. So go ahead, finish alternating, and when you come back I'll show you how long I made mine and then show you how to make the thumb opening. So now I made it to the stitch marker. So I'm going to go ahead and make my last half double crochet, and I maintain my stitch count of 25 for this round, which is what I want. Then I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into that stitch and then move up to my next round. So mine, I stopped after I reached 4 inches, and that's 4 inches from where you finished to the brim or the ribbed portion of the mittens. So 4 inches. And then that's where we're going to start making our thumb round. So I wanted to show you, because this is very important, because these mittens have a seam at the bottom where we made the ribbed portion, you want to make sure that that seam is facing down. So your thumb, I already made this mitten. This is the mitten for my left hand. So you can see that I made the opening for the thumb on the left side. And also on top of my arm there's no seam. So the seam is on the inside of my arm. So you need to make sure that when you make this thumb portion, and the thumb portion is made the same way, except one will be for the left hand and then one will be for the right hand. So you need to make sure that you mark the right part of the mitten for creating the thumb opening. So now I'm going to be making a right-handed one for this one. So I want the seam to be facing down. So the seam needs to be facing down. So you center it on the inside of your arm. And then you want to line up so your thumb will fall on this ridge. And the thumb opening will be between 2 ridges. So you're going to put a stitch marker into that ridge that goes along your thumb. So now I know that this is where my thumb opening is going to be. Now if I were going to make it for my left hand, again I have the seam on the inside of my hand. So the thumb would be on the opposite side. So instead of the stitch marker being here, because I'm making this for the right hand, if you're making it for the left hand, it would be along this ridge. So you put your stitch marker here. And then it's made the same way. So I'm just going to show you how I did it with the right hand. but you would make the left hand the same way for the opening, except it would be on this side. So now I have my stitch marker in place, as well as my yarn marker. And this is going to be the thumb opening round. So I'm going to make a half double crochet in every stitch except for the area that I'm going to be making my thumb opening. So you would make one half double crochet in every stitch until you get to your stitch marker where you're making your thumb opening. So we're almost there. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up with you. So now you're getting close. So you want to allow the ridge before and the ridge with the stitch marker and the ridge after to be the size of the thumb opening. So I have one more stitch before the ridge. I'm going to make a half double crochet into that stitch. So you can see that my half double crochet is right before the ridge stitch. And then here is the ridge stitch with the stitch marker. This is where my thumb falls. So now you're going to make a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So after you make your chain of 6, you're going to skip. So you're going to skip the stitch with the stitch marker, and you're going to skip all the way over until you get to the other ridge stitch. So here is the ridge stitch after this ridge stitch. So you skip the thumb ridge stitch and you make a half double crochet into this next ridge stitch. So you just yarn over and then you go right into that ridge stitch. And then you bring up a loop. You have 3 loops on the hook. You yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 3 for a half double crochet. And then you just created a thumb opening. And this is what mine looks like. Then you can finish up by just making 1 half double crochet in each of the remaining stitches. That brings me to my yarn marker. Make a half double crochet into that stitch, and then I know I need to make a slip stitch into the stitch with my stitch marker. And then I'm ready for the next round, so I chain 2 and then move my stitch marker up, and then you can remove the other stitch marker. You don't need it anymore. So now I made my chain 2 to move up to the next round. I placed my stitch marker and my yarn marker, and now you're ready for your next round. So for the next round, you're just going to make your front post half double crochet stitch around the 2 rounds down, and then a half double crochet into the next stitch. And you're going to repeat this pattern until you get to the thumb opening. So front post half double crochet stitch, half double crochet stitch, front post half double crochet stitch until you get to the thumb opening, and then come back. So now I just finished my half double crochet stitch before the thumb opening, and you have your front post half double crochet stitch here, the one right before the ridge for the thumb opening. So you still want to make your front post half double crochet stitch around that post. Then you're going to start working around the chain that you made for the thumb opening. So you're going to make 6 half double crochet into that chain 6 space that you made for the thumb. So you yarn over, go into that space, bring up a loop, and make your half double crochet. So that's your first one. And you're going to make a total of 6 half double crochet into that space. So there's the second, third, fourth, and then I had to tie to join my yarn, so I have a knot there. I'm just going to work around it. That's 4. I'll bury the loose yarn ends later. There's 5 and 6. So I have 6 half double crochet in that chain 6 space. Then you want to make a front post half double crochet stitch in the ridge after the thumb space right here. So here's the thumb ridge, and then this is the ridge after. So this one was the one before the thumb space ridge, and then the one after. So you just want to make a front post half double crochet stitch around that one. Then you make a half double crochet into the next stitch, and then a front post half double crochet stitch, and then that will bring me to my yarn marker, so I know it's coming to the end. So I'll remove it, make a half double crochet into that stitch, and then a front post half double crochet around my last post before the stitch marker, and then I'll slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker to finish the round, and then chain 2 to move up to the next round. And then you can see how your thumb opening is looking, and the rest of the work looks good. So now I have my stitch marker in place and my yarn marker, and I'm ready for the next round. So for the next round you need to make a half double crochet into the next stitch, and you're making 1 half double crochet in every stitch. You can't forget to do your half double crochet stitch rounds in between your front post half double crochet stitch rounds, because it helps to cover gaps. So you notice that it's very consistent and thick for this mitten, and the reason is because you have that half double crochet round. So it's important to do that. I mean, you don't have to, but then you'll have more gaps in your finished mitten. So here's one of my finished mittens, and you could see the gorgeous work in the left mitten, and it just helps prevent any gaps, and it keeps it warmer. It's really, I like it. So try not to forget the half double crochet rounds. So go ahead, finish making your half double crochets until you get to the thumb opening, and then come back and I'll show you what I do near the thumb opening. So for my half double crochets, I went all the way until I got to my ridge before the thumb opening. So I finished a half double crochet stitch here, and now I'm going to make a front post half double crochet stitch around the previous round's front post half double crochet stitch. So I yarn over and go around that stitch, bring up a loop, complete my front post half double crochet stitch, and then you're going to make 3 half double crochet decrease stitches across the thumb opening from the previous round. So you're going to take your crochet hook, you're going to yarn over, you're going to go into the next stitch from the thumb opening, bring up a loop, you have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, and then you have 5 loops on your hook. Go ahead and yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 5 for a half double crochet decrease stitch. So that's 1. Then you're going to yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, 5 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through all 5 loops for a half double crochet decrease stitch. And we're going to make one more. So you yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through all 5 for a half double crochet decrease stitch. Then you want to make sure you get your front post half double crochet stitch around the ridge. So you had one here, you have the thumb opening, and then you have your last ridge here after the thumb. So yarn over, go around that front post from the previous round and make your front post half double crochet stitch. Then you're just going to finish making one half double crochet into the next stitch and one half double crochet into each of the remaining stitches. Then you just make a slip stitch into the stitch with your stitch marker. That's why I love that stitch marker. It just helps so much. And you'll see if you use this method how easy it is and how neat your work looks. Then you're just going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then you're ready for the next round. So go ahead and move your stitch marker and your yarn marker, and then we'll get ready for the next round. So now I have my stitch marker in place, my yarn marker in place, and I'm ready for my next round. So for this next round, you're just going to start with your front post half double crochet around 2 rounds down and from your previous rounds, front post half double crochet stitch. Then you make a half double crochet into the next stitch, and you just keep repeating this pattern until you get to the thumb opening. I hope that you like this pattern as much as I do. I really love how it it adds such a thickness to your mitten. So you can see how I'm alternating my front post half double crochet stitch with the half double crochet stitch, just like we've done for the rest of the pattern, until you get to the thumb opening, and then come back. Okay, so I just finished my half double crochet stitch before the ridge. So now I'm going to make a front post half double crochet stitch around that front post half double crochet stitch from the previous round. And then I'm going to make a half double crochet stitch into the next stitch. So you want to make sure that you make it into this stitch, and then you have 2 stitches in the center of the thumb. We're going to make a front post half double crochet stitch around the half double crochet decrease stitch from the previous round. So you want to make your half double crochet stitch into the stitch that you have the front post half double crochet stitch from the previous round. So you just yarn over and go into that same stitch and make your half double crochet stitch. Then you're going to make a front post half double crochet stitch around the half double crochet decrease stitch from the previous round. So you just yarn over and then just go around that half double crochet decrease stitch from the previous round, bring up a loop, and then make your front post half double crochet stitch. And then that keeps your ridge consistent here, which is what you want. Then you're going to make a half double crochet stitch into the stitch right before your front post half double crochet stitch from the previous round. So yarn over, go into that stitch, make your half double crochet stitch, then you make your front post half double crochet stitch around the front post half double crochet stitch from the previous round. And then this is how your work looks. Really pretty and consistent with the pattern. Then you're going to make a half double crochet stitch into the next stitch. And you can't forget your front post half double crochet stitch around the previous round's front post half double crochet stitch. Remove your yarn marker, make a half double crochet stitch into that stitch, then make a front post half double crochet stitch around your last post for the round. Then you can slip stitch into your stitch marker stitch to complete another round. Then you just chain 2 to move up to the next round. So now I'm all ready for this next round, and you know that we need a half double crochet round, so you just go ahead and make 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. So I finished my half double crochet round, and for mine I have 25 stitches in the round right now. And again, don't be too concerned with the stitch count, especially if you're like one off from me, if you're making the same size, because essentially this half double crochet round is a filler round, so you don't have any gaps, large gaps in your mitten. So now this is the important round. I've already moved up to the next round, moved my stitch marker up and my yarn marker, and this round is your pattern. So what you're going to do is just start with your front post half double crochet stitch like we've been doing for the pattern, and then you know you have a half double crochet stitch in between your ridges, and then a front post half double crochet stitch around the previous round's front post half double crochet stitch, and then you just keep repeating that pattern all the way around back to where you started. So now I'm back to where I started. I've already slip stitched and moved my stitch marker up in the yarn marker, and this is how much length I have from the thumb opening so far, and this is where you can decide how much length you want to add. You can keep repeating the half double crochet front post half double crochet stitch as many times as you want to get the length that you want for your mittens. Now for mine, I finished with about, let's see, I have about 3 inches from the thumb opening to the top of my fingerless mittens. So that means that I just need one more round of half double crochet and front post half double crochet. So I'm going to make a half double crochet round for the next round, and then my last round will be the front post half double crochet round. So go ahead, if you're making yours like mine, go ahead and finish the half double crochet round and then your next front post half double crochet round, and then come back. So now I just finished the 2 rounds, the half double crochet and the front post half double crochet round. So now both of my mittens are the same size. You just want to make sure that they're the same size. And now we're going to make the last round. So for the last round is going to be a decrease round. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted a gentle taper at the tip of the mittens for your fingers so that it's not like gaping. So I'm going to show you how to make a gentle decrease round for the tip or the opening where your fingers come out. So now, instead of it starting with a chain of 2, I started with a chain of 1, and then I placed my stitch marker into that first chain. And then I'm going to place my yarn marker again in my last stitch so I know when I'm at my stitch marker. It just helps me to see where I need to slip stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker. So now you're going to make 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches. So actually, the first one will be 3 stitches because the chain 1 counts as the first stitch. So you're going to go into the next stitch. There's your second, third single crochet, fourth single crochet, and then you're going to make a single crochet decrease stitch. So you're going to go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, go into the next stitch and bring up a loop. You have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 3 for a single crochet 2 stitches together or a decrease stitch. Now you can make 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to make a single crochet 2 stitches together, or it's known as a decrease stitch. And then you just keep repeating that pattern, 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches, and then single crochet 2 stitches together. One single crochet into 4, and then single crochet 2 stitches together. And then that will bring you to your last stitch. Go ahead and remove that yarn marker, make a single crochet into that last stitch, then you're going to slip stitch. Oh, looks like I have another stitch. I'm going to go ahead and I actually put the yarn marker in the stitch before the last stitch. So now just make a single crochet in your last stitch, 2 stitches, and then slip stitch into the stitch marker. So see, stitch marker helped me. I just love the stitch marker. It just makes your work really nice and neat. I only do that method with my half double crochet mainly because half double crochet stitches can be a little bit tricky. So now I'm going to make a slip stitch into my first chain 1 for the round. Then you can go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and just pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And then I have a hidden stitch marker here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Now you're ready to bury your loose yarn ends. So you just take your tapestry needle and put the loose yarn end onto the tapestry needle. Then you want to weave it into the wrong side of the work. And then I like to go a couple of different directions. Just weave it through the work. Then you can take and trim the loose yarn end. So now you just need your other mittens. And again, I can't stress enough that this seam goes on the bottom, and then your thumb opening needs to be on the right side. So make sure you make your thumb opening on the right side, and that both of your seams are down. You don't want them showing on top of your arms. It won't look very nice.